I'm a scientist, a neuroscientist. I have a passionate interest in physics and cosmology, and that has everything to do with coming to a deeper understanding of that ultra-real realm that I encountered during my near-death experience. Before my coma, which happened at age 54, I had basically kind of bought into what John C. Eccles, the Nobel laureate, had called promissory materialism. Basically the notion, if we keep studying the brain, someday we'll understand how it produces consciousness. I did not realize that in fact all of the evidence was leading away from the simplistic falsehood of materialism towards a much grander worldview. And in many ways, my case served to help get a lot of other scientists on board because of the documented damage to my neocortex that should have made any kind of conscious awareness impossible, as opposed to the extraordinary ultra-reality I experienced, like so many other NDEers have over the millennia, of showing us that we're much more than these physical bodies in this material world. And so I've come to realize that in so many ways, my case was certainly very helpful because of its very strong evidence the brain does not produce consciousness, and it showed this extraordinary power of consciousness to expand when liberated from the shackles of the physical brain. But there are many other NDEs out there that contribute to this grand knowledge. And not only that, I think that it's with the kind of broader view of consciousness that we'll be discussing tonight in our presentation, where you start to realize how NDEs are just the tip of the spear that help us to come to a much greater understanding of humanity and our relationship with the universe. There's a tremendous awakening going on in the scientific community, even now, and it is led by these studies in consciousness and some of the deep mysteries reported by experiencers, shared death experiences, past life memories in children, etc. There's so many kind of examples of non-local consciousness. And this is something where NDE researches, and that especially includes people associated with IANDS, International Association of Near-Death Studies, has really become a world treasure to help us get to this higher level of understanding. Now, I'd like to point out in many ways I've come to see this as a unification, a synthesis of all of our thought systems. For example, I believe that the spirituality, the deep universal spirituality revealed through NDEs in this modern study of consciousness, is something that, for example, Christopher Copps, in his beautiful book, The Essence of Religions, made very clear that no religion had it absolutely right, but that in fact NDEs show the golden nuggets within all the religions that contribute to this greater knowledge of our spirituality. And I think his book is a beautiful way of showing how NDEs can provide the evidence that helps to unify our thinking. There's no question from the world of NDEs, the binding force of love, as so many have reported, being one with that loving universe, that loving God. The Life Review shows the golden rule is written into the very fabric of the universe. In so many ways, science and spirituality strengthen each other. There's an unprecedented revolution unfolding, and I believe trust and gratitude, co-creation, and the free will of the higher soul is all what we come to with NDEs leading the way in our study of consciousness. We are truly sharing one eternal consciousness.
So this concept of oneness, it's not new. It may be new to people like Eben, who haven't really thought of it that way. But ancient mystical traditions from around the world have known this for millennia. For example, in China, we have Taoism, and that's a focus on harmonizing humans with the cosmos. Now, the cosmos in Taoism is an organic process without beginning or end. All parts of the entire cosmos belong to one organic whole. And out of India, in the Vedic texts, here's a quote: "The truth is one. Sages name it variously. And Hindus of today believe the soul is permanent." And that's just another phrase for consciousness is primary. But we are not alone in the West. There is a tradition of oneness that goes all the way back to Greek times, and it was actually Pythagoras in the 6th century BCE who had ties to ancient Egypt. And today, the Stanford Encyclopedia acknowledges him as the father of philosophy. He's regarded as the master philosopher from whom the foundation of all Western world philosophy was derived. Now, we may have forgotten about oneness. However, according to Pythagoras, Hermes, who is also known as Thoth in Egypt, Hermes was the wisest teacher of all. And Hermes acknowledges oneness by saying, from one soul of the universe are all souls derived. So this is not new. And incredibly, near-death experiencers, they learn about oneness firsthand. When they're hovering between life and death and removed from their physical body, they come back knowing this truth. There's no question in their mind that oneness is the fundamental reality that we all are living within. But within conventional materialist science, near-death experiences are considered to be anomalies because they don't fit the model, and so they're ignored, except by groups of frontier scientists who have developed new fields of study to address these anomalies, including the study of near-death experiences and many other aspects. So these courageous scientists have risked academic reputations, and for the past 140 years, they have gathered copious amounts of evidence that there is more to our world than just the physical realm, and the fact that our awareness continues beyond the death of the physical body. And so Thomas Kuhn in 1962, he addresses this kind of issue in his book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, where he talks about paradigm shifts. And this occurs when enough anomalies arise that challenge the fundamentals of a dominant scientific paradigm. And when this happens, a new paradigm is demanded, one that is based on a preponderance of evidence, and it serves to resolve the anomalies. So now, Kuhn would call this a crisis point because it's not unusual for scientists who are committed to the existing paradigm. Some people call them, fundamaterialists. I like that phrase. And it's not unusual for those who are committed to that paradigm to resist. And this creates an amazing amount of tension. And I believe this is the state we're in right now. Now, Kuhn would call this a crisis point. And when we reach a crisis point, one of three things can happen. Number one, the existing dominant paradigm of materialism will resolve the anomalies. And that, of course, is a possibility. But so far right now, that dominant paradigm calls near-death experiences and other phenomena hallucinations. Or they say that, they have this promise that someday we'll know how the brain produces these events, that promissory materialism that Eben mentioned. Now, number two, and the other thing that could happen is the issue just continues to be ignored. And of course, that's the preferred choice of most materialist scientists, the very dedicated ones. They just deny the evidence, or they don't even bother to review it. They just dismiss it as not even important because it doesn't fit their model. Now, the third thing that can happen in these kinds of tension points, these crises, is that a paradigm is adopted that better explains the anomalies. And this kind of paradigm would acknowledge that the spiritual realm and our connection to it is as primarily spiritual beings, because that's what all the evidence is pointing to. So spirituality in this context, we can define that most simply as a feeling of connection to something greater and a sense of meaning and purpose to our existence. And within a broader model of reality, the concept of spirit, it's no longer an illusion. It's not a hallucination. A spiritual existence beyond the physical realm becomes part of our very reality.
Thus, what we're really seeing is that the scientific evidence, when you study all phenomena of consciousness, instead of just ignoring and denying them because our weak explanatory models within materialism fail, there is a way to move forward, and that's what we'll be discussing tonight. In this new model of reality accommodates near-death experiences and many other spiritual experiences that bring tremendous richness to life and show a tremendous amount of kind of interconnection and this shared purpose that Karen has mentioned. Now, I'd like to say as a scientist, what I came to realize in the years after my NDE, for one thing, the NDE is shocking. You know, personal experience absolutely convinces you of the reality of this much bigger kind of universe that we have to explain. And I know many other near-death experiencers who have felt that it's way too real to be real. And it's much more real than this world. It's kind of an astonishing and shocking, unexpected thing to encounter. But in many ways, what I see is the scientific world is opening up to this tremendously. For example, one great resource, I'm on the scientific advisory board for a group called the Galileo Commission. And I would advise anyone out there who hasn't studied it yet, go to galileocommission.org and read the material there, and you'll see exactly where all this is going. And this is work that is supported by many hundreds of scientists around the world who are interested in consciousness. Now, at this point, it's useful to bring up the concept of consilience. This is a notion in science or philosophy that when you study a very deep problem from multiple different perspectives, that often you find this kind of convergence or consilience of information, suggesting a deeper truth. The deeper truth we're discussing tonight is oneness, oneness of mind, connection. In many ways, I can say that my first introduction to this after my coma was introduction to the hard problem of consciousness. Now, the hard problem of consciousness is really an impossible problem for materialism, but it lays out the seeming difficulty in trying to explain all of mental experience based simply on the workings of the brain. Now, I know that one hero of mine, Wilder Penfield, one of the most renowned neurosurgeons of the 20th century, wrote a book in 1975 based on his work, more than 3 decades, stimulating the brain in awake patients. One of the best ways to get to mind and brain and their connection. And in his book of The Mystery of the Mind, he pointed out that it was clear to him that you could not explain all of mind through brain alone. Now, David Chalmers brought this point philosophically of the hard problem to the fore in the mid-1990s. It was based on much work that had happened up till that time, but really it's become an impossible problem of consciousness. And there are additional factors that show why this is so impossible. For example, in philosophy of mind, the binding problem addresses the apparent unity of consciousness within an individual mind. How come all the visual system in my occipital lobes of what I'm looking at, the acoustic cortex of what I'm hearing, executive function in the frontal lobes, access to memory, access to planning future activities, body orientation in space, all of that is one unified whole. How does that happen? It's because we're dealing with one unified consciousness in the first place. In fact, quantum physics, this is another part of consilience, of the argument of multiple different aspects showing us this profound primacy of consciousness. The most proven field in the history of science. The founding fathers like Wolfgang Pauli and Pascual Jordan and Erwin Schrödinger and others, they all noted that these experiments looking at electrons and photons and the subatomic constituents of the world around us did not seem to exist independent of the observing mind. And that is an absolutely stunning realization that they hit way back in those early days. And in fact, all of the current research on quantum physics has continued to prove this point more and more strongly, that really the best answer is one of idealism. There's a beautiful essay by Richard Kahn Henry, who is a physicist at Johns Hopkins University, in the scientific journal Nature in 2005, called Mental Universe, where he made it very clear that the pathway of understanding of quantum physics was showing that there's a top-down causality that comes from the mental layer of the universe that really governs the events of our lives. It's not a bottom-up causality. This is a very crucial concept that is now only fully coming into recognition by the scientific world as showing idealism to be the answer, the mental realm. And we as sentient beings have access to that mental realm. Now, in addition, in this discussion of consilience, is all the tremendous evidence from the world of parapsychology of non-local consciousness. Because all of the materialist models generally assume that it's all local interactions within the substance of the brain and our sensory systems, and yet parapsychology has shown beyond any reasonable doubt that things like telepathy, extrasensory perception, clairvoyance, remote viewing, out-of-body experiences, precognition, that we can know the future, presentiment, that in fact our autonomic nervous system can show a knowledge of the future before that future has even been generated in certain computer models. Psychokinesis, the ability to manipulate matter with mind. Distance healing, the power of prayer. Placebo effect, spontaneous remission of cancers and infections. After-death communications. End-of-life dreams and visions. Near-death and shared death experiences, which are just like near-death, but happen in people who are normally physiologically healthy and normal. Past life memories in children suggestive of reincarnation. The 2,500 plus cases studied at University of Virginia over 6 decades. Reincarnation is an absolutely established fact according to this data. Transpersonal psychology, which uses hypnotic regression to uncover past lives. All of these features of non-local consciousness that I've mentioned have been scientifically validated and studied and point to a much bigger model of reality that we need to explain human existence. And the good news is it really opens the door to a tremendous amount of will that we have in discerning information at a distance and across time, and also being able to influence that. So I think this is all an incredibly important aspect of humanity for us to come into knowing. We often talk about placebo effect and spontaneous remission as some of the most profound examples of mind over matter, our abilities to influence our emerging reality. And I think in many ways, NDEs as the tip of the spear are really just kind of representative of coming into wholeness, healing. All of these anomalies I've mentioned of parapsychology are pretty much inexplicable from the perspective of materialism, and yet there are more natural ways to look at it. The scientific models emerging now, for example, as we discussed in our book, Living in a Mindful Universe, that we wrote together, is really one that supports objective idealism. It turns out that there are other dualisms, other ways of looking at the interaction between mind and matter that could work. But the one thing that we have to eliminate is this false notion that the brain creates consciousness. And that we have, essentially, when you follow that line of reasoning, it leads you to we have no free will. I think that's one of the grandest mistakes we've ever made. We must take responsibility for our choices in this world as individuals and as Homo sapiens. If we're truly to be wise, we need to take proper stewardship of this planet, showing how we are all one with this planet, and we must start to act that way and not in these self-serving, independent ways that our materialist false sense of separation has led us into. So in so many ways, the brain serves as a filter for primordial consciousness.
So that primordial consciousness, that's us. And so in this context, consciousness is just our awareness of existing. And our connection to the spiritual realm is through that awareness in what Eben calls the mental realm. And direct personal experience, just like near-death experiencers have discovered, is humanity's pathway to oneness. When each of us can really discover for ourselves firsthand that it's true, it no longer is a belief. It's just a fact. It's a knowing. It is undeniable once you've had that experience yourself. And so these things can happen spontaneously, like so many near-death experiencers have experienced, but it can also be cultivated. And so when we speak about that mental realm, this includes your emotions, your thoughts, everything that occurs within mind, everything. And so that includes the unconscious, which is the subconscious, the collective unconscious. That's where we're having our dream space. And it also includes our daily awareness, the ego mind, thoughts that might be running through your mind without you even realizing they're going on, with no ability to manage, that sort of daily awareness. Maybe it's emotions when you start to react to things you're seeing on the news, or within relationships when you're having difficulties, or you're not having difficulties, you're having beautiful emotional states. But another part of our awareness can be considered that transcendental state. And I really love, if you are familiar with the Disney movie that came out last year called Soul, they do a beautiful job of explaining some sort of afterlife and the physical realm that exists. And in between the physical realm and that spiritual realm, they call it the zone. And this is what I refer to as the mental realm. This is where we have access to everything that's going on. And when you can sort of transcend that daily awareness, get into a flow state where everything else doesn't matter. You're in a timeless state and you're just focused on one thing. Some people might refer to that as mindfulness. In a hypnotic state, when you go through hypnosis, you find a part of you that maybe you're not as readily accessing when you're in your daily awareness. The same thing can happen in meditation. And we sometimes refer to this as the hypnagogic state. And that's that state between awake and asleep. The state between that daily awareness and the subconscious state of your dreams, for example. Now, lucid dreaming is a little different from regular dreaming because that's when you are dreaming, but your awareness becomes aware that you're dreaming, that this is not actually physical reality. So all of these ways are ways that we can sort of transcend that daily awareness. And this is how we become more in touch with that spiritual realm, that spiritual aspect that we all have a part within us. There is spirit within all of us. And when Eben talks about mind over matter, I like to kind of change that up and say spirit over matter, because sometimes that daily awareness isn't so readily able to sort of manage the ongoing reality. But when you can touch that spiritual realm, like all of these near-death experiencers have, it's a different sort of awareness about our daily existence. And all of this can be cultivated through meditation, many, many, many other types of techniques. And of course, our favorite technique, especially Eben, who listens to these recordings a couple hours a day, Sacred Acoustics audio recordings that contain binaural beats that help to support that hypnagogic state, where your body is profoundly relaxed, but your mind still maintains an awareness, but not the same kind of awareness as your ego mind and those racing thoughts. And so we are going to share with you a brief example of that sound. And so you can really feel how to generate that experience of feeling that connection to something greater. Now, these are better listened to using headphones. So if you happen to have headphones with you, please utilize them. If not, this will be available in a replay and the higher quality will be spliced in. So I'm going to now share with you this sound. So I invite you to close your eyes and just relax into the sound.
Bring your attention to this moment, here and now, calm and relaxed. Observe your breath as you inhale and exhale. As you breathe in, silently say, "Let." As you breathe out, silently say, "Go." Breathe in, let. Breathe out, go. Let go. It is said that the sound of Om represents the primordial vibration that makes up everything in the universe, where one is all and all is one. Feel your connection to all that is and let go. return from your experience and remember your connection to all that is, and have absolute trust that all is well.